Okay, so I originally recorded a version of the video that has clips, however that got taken down, so I'm going to do this without using clips. So expect to see this poster throughout the majority of the video. Okay, bye. Hey, so originally I was going to do a review on A Bug's Life, and then this afterwards. But then I realized that I want to focus on things I actually want to talk about first, and then focus on the other stuff later down the line. Also, I want to mentally prepare myself for the amount of shouting we're going to have to do for that damn video, but enough said. On with the show. If you've seen my Pixar ranking, you know that I love Up. It's not only my favorite Pixar movie, but also one of my favorite movies in general. Being, as I'm writing this, one of only 32 movies I've given a 10 out of 10. It's currently at number 16 as of right now. That's probably not going to change. However, what you probably don't know is that I'm a huge fan of Schaeferless Productions. He's one of my favorite YouTube channels. I started watching from his Sony ranking, and the rest is history. However, like with any movie reviewer, there are some things that I agree with, and some things that I don't. For example, I agree that Atlantis Miles Return is one of the worst Disney sequels ever. But I don't agree with Rio 2 being better than the first. But I'm also not oblivious enough to get my ass in a twist over it. What? A famous YouTuber prefers a hated sequel? Cry about it. I hate Rio 2 as much as the next guy, but not enough to bully a YouTuber about it. If you're one of those people, exit is this way. You can let that sink in on the way out. Like with some movie opinions, any movie opinions, there'll be some things that I don't agree with, but that's okay. We don't all have to like the same things. Same applies to what he thinks of Up. He thinks it's good, but not great. And that he doesn't think it deserves to be Best Picture material. Which are fine opinions to have. Seriously, you're going to Letterboxd and find someone saying something negative about Up. Because trust me, those people exist. So this video is not to prove him wrong, but just to show that there is thematic worth in this film as a whole after the first 10 minutes. Okay? We got it? Good. No bullying. Please, I beg of you. I'm sure every person on the planet knows what Up is about, but if you don't, here's a synopsis. So here's a synopsis. Carl Fredrickson is a grumpy 78-year-old man who, after the death of his wife, has been consumed with grief and refused to let go of his house. After accidentally injuring a construction worker, he fears the risk of getting his house taken away from him. To not let this happen, he attaches thousands upon thousands of balloons on his house and has it float into the sky, hoping to fulfill him and his wife's lifelong dream of living on Paradise Falls in South America. The Coke continent. No, not that Coke. That Coke. I'm not even joking. If you look it up, Coca-Cola is particularly popular in South and Latin America, with this graph showing that most sales of Coca-Cola in 2014 were in Latin America. Wait, what was I talking about? Along the way, Carl is forced to bring along this kid named Russell, a wilderness explorer, Doug, a dog that has a collar that lets his thoughts be heard, and Kevin, a rare bird that roams the jungles of Paradise Falls. Throughout the film, Carl goes through many obstacles and wacky misadventures in hopes of fulfilling the dream he and his wife once had. Right off the bat, the animation and music are perfect. No notes. For 2009, the animation holds up spectacularly well, with unique designs, beautiful colors, fluid movements, and breathtaking backgrounds. Plus, the actual sky looks transcendently amazing. I could look at these backgrounds all day. Any shot of the mountains when they arrive at Paradise Falls is just, mwah. Chef's kiss. The animators outdid themselves with this movie. My compliments also go to Michael Giacchino as well, as he delivers by far Pixar's best ever score. Such a large variety of amazing tracks that never drag. There is not one single dud. Not one. The fluid beauty of married life as it goes from happy and joyful to somber but hopeful, and then eventually to emotionally devastating. The playful energy of Kevin Bacon, which is the actual name of the song. Just look it up yourself. I'm not going to bother looking it up for you and not your mom or something. The chaotic nature of Escape from One's Mountain, the powerful slow piano of Stuff We Did, the inspirational tone of Memories Can Weigh You Down, the thrilling speed of Seizing the Spirit of Adventure, and I could just go on. This film deserved its Best Original Score win. I absolutely adore it. No, I don't adore it. I cherish it. It might very well be my favorite film score of all time. And now for the quote-unquote arguing part. In his Pixar ranking video, Shafrilla said that the film peaks in the opening 10 minutes. And yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. The opening 10 minutes of this film is one of the greatest sequences in film history. You could point to it as the sole reason as to why this film got a Best Picture nomination. However, the rest of the film is just so amazing, so charming, so likable, so imaginative, and so creative. But we'll get to that when we get to that. After the first 10 minutes, it trades the emotional drama with some incredible charm and hilarious comedy. This is probably one of the funniest Pixar films ever, right up there with Monsters, Inc. and Inside Out. All three are coincidentally Pete Docter films. In all seriousness, this film has no right to be this damn funny. There were double-digit moments throughout where I was laughing my ass off. I would love to show you these moments, but I can't because Disney's Disney. The hoisting Russell out the window scene, the tense scene, the take a bath hippie line, Carl falling to the floor of the house and it cuts to an ambulance, anything Doug says, squirrel, Kevin mocking Carl, the damn dogs in the audience, the house being revealed to be in a construction zone, Russell pretending to talk to Ellie, and Carl talking to her, but then to Russell, and so on and so on and so on. This film's comedic writing is just amazing. There are a few jokes I didn't laugh at. Like a tiny few, maybe one or two. The trailer shot of Russell sliding across the window is probably the biggest one for me. That's a very big trailer shot. I don't think any other old Pixar films have trailer shots like that. And if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. The drama isn't as prevalent throughout a lot of the film, like Shafrilla said. That doesn't mean it isn't still there. When the film meets to wind down and take it slow, it does, and it returns to the powerful nature of those first 10 minutes. In his Best Animated Feature ranking, he says that he doesn't see the connection about the promise Carl made to Ellie about going to Paradise Falls and the promise he made to Russell about protecting Kevin. In my eyes, the connection is through these three words. Cross your heart. When Russell says those words to Carl, it reminds him of Ellie, and remembers his promise and wants to not let Russell or Ellie down. It's simple, yet profound. A profound connection that also adds to Carl's character arc of letting go of the past, but I'll get to that later. Another two powerful scenes are ones that Shafrilla's already talked about and likewise praised for their connection. To sum it up, in one scene, Russell talks about the things he did with his dad and how he remembers the boring stuff more than the interesting stuff, and the way it comes back into the movie is some fantastic writing. It was quite a shock to discover that one of the writers of the story of the film was Tom McCarthy, who directed and co-wrote Spotlight, the film that won Best Picture at the 2016 Oscars, as well as him getting an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, which ironically, Inside Out also got nominated for Best Original Screenplay, and as that film was directed by Pete Docter, who also directed Up, which Tom McCarthy co-wrote the story of. Very interesting connections here. Very interesting. There are other powerful moments in the film, like when Carl finally arrives at Paradise Falls and goes back to the broken house, fixing up some of the furniture as he looks at the still messed up living room with the house, drenched in grey colours, representing his mental state, asking him, was all of this worth it? Another powerful scene is the ending, where Carl, Russell and Doug sit on the curb that Russell and his dad used to sit on, before it pans up to the clouds and to the blimp. And then it cuts to the house resting on Paradise Falls. Their dream finally come true. A beautiful note to end the movie on. I love it. The typical third act breakup scene actually works, and you can see where Carl's coming from when he lashes out at Russell and Doug. The film doesn't need to be dramatic throughout, but the combination of hilarious comedy and gripping drama makes it such a unique tonal experience. The two tones mix well, and, for me at least, it never feels like the two tones are fighting back and forth. Speaking of fighting back and forth, the characters. Up has a very small but very likable bundle of characters. So you got Carl, Russell, Doug, Kevin is up in the house, the other dogs, and Charles Muntz. Spoilers from this point on if you haven't seen the film, which I'm assuming it's none of you, but if you still haven't seen Up, what the hell are you doing with your life? Go see it right now. The characters in this film are extremely charming, likable, and interesting. Carl reminds me of Woody in the first Toy Story, where he acts like a self-entitled jerk to others, but eventually warms up in the end and becomes the hero. Although Carl's reason for being a jerk is more understandable and not as stupid as Woody's in the first film specifically. He's still a fun and likable protagonist who goes through a lot of character development. His main character arc of letting go of the past is really well done, and I got really invested in his inner conflict, and it's great to see him overcome it. Russell's also a great character. Jordan Nagai delivers one of the best child voice performances I've ever seen in any film, sounding so genuine and like a real kid, while also being heartfelt and funny as well. Carl and Russell have great chemistry and work off each other really well, and are also very likable, as I said. Doug is also hilarious, like I said, and so is Kevin, but the standouts for me are the villains. Charles Muntz joins the cast halfway through the film. He was Carl and Ellie's idol throughout their childhoods, and it's not surprising to see his turn to the dark side. It's cleverly hinted as to what his true intentions are throughout the film, without actively spoiling it. Some people have questioned how Charles and Carl look around the same age, but my guess is that Charles is around his late 90s. I'm not joking when I say the entire next section I wrote for this part of the script is now completely useless because after reading the plot synopsis on Wikipedia, so it says Carl is 10 and he's 78 in the film. And I looked through the script and it says that Charles Muntz is 92 years old. So this confirms they are not the same age. They just look the same because most old people look the same, as what a lot of people think, but obviously they don't, because they look different depending on what age they are. It's just that because of the animation, Charles and Carl look the same age. Although I think I could tell when I was younger that Charles looked a little bit older because of like how more rigid he moved, which is funny because Carl's younger, yeah, he moves even more rigid early in the film, but Carl becomes more energized at the end. So, which is like sort of representing his, becoming stronger. So, yeah, so I waffled on in the script about the fact that he was, about like how Charles is in his late 90s and how they aren't the same age, but because it just confirms on the Wikipedia page, I guess the entire section is just completely useless now, so, yeah, that was a good waste of my time. I love spending my time on something not being able to finish it or use it. It's great! Muntz isn't a fantastic villain, but he does a lot more than just work for the film, in my opinion. He's the exact contrast to Carl and Russell. They moved on from their past, while Charles let an obsession take over his sanity and make him lose his mind, turning him into the deranged psychopath we see in the film. In that regard, he's a great villain. Plus, his sheer disregard for human life, as shown in that one scene where he makes to basically tells Carl that he killed a lot of people, makes him a lot more intimidating than he initially appears. He's nowhere near as good as Randall, Waternoose, or Syndrome, but I still think he's a lot better than people give him credit for. He couldn't work in any other film, even though I can think of scenarios where he isn't the villain of the film, like you can write him out and not much would change. He's the only villain that could work for Up. His dogs are also great, particularly Alpha. They could have given him a deep voice to go with his intimidating design, which I would show, but time constraints. Also, this isn't part of the script, but if you can, there's like noises all over the place, so just ignore that. Just continue making the video. They could have given him a deep voice to go with his intimidating design, which they do later, but they instead add the fact that his color's voice box sometimes breaks and makes his voice pitched up. It makes him 10 times more memorable, unlike what some people have said. Doug. Your villain doesn't need to constantly keep cracking jokes in order to be great. It's a great addition for certain villains, like Syndrome, Skinner, Chick Hicks, etc. But most of the time, they are needed. Lotso doesn't crack any jokes throughout Toy Story 3. People still consider him a fantastic villain. I guess the big difference with Disney villains and Pixar villains is that Disney's villains are more completely evil, like they relish in their evilness. Whereas Pixar's villains are under the delusion that what they're doing is good. Corrupt CEOs, unsold toys, salty fans, jealous chefs, a goddamn wheel, and in the case of Up, a great adventurer turned deranged lunatic. And I hope you understand what I meant by all those analogies, because if you don't, blame Disney, man. One aspect I just realized while writing this that I forgot to talk about is the story itself. At its core, Up has a very simple story. Old man, go to waterfall with house. However, it's the large scale sense of adventure and touching moments that make the story so much more unique. This is probably one of the most unique American animated films I've ever seen. Yes. American. There are tons of animated films from outside the US that are way more unique than Up. You should definitely watch some of them. I'm helping Schaefer for this cause. Anyways, I've talked about a lot about the tone and touching moments and whatnot. But one thing I haven't talked about is the scale of adventure in the film. This film feels like an old 1940s adventure film, and I mean that in the best, most possible way, possible. The incredible way the adventure ties into the film's story is fun and great to see, and the adventure itself is one of the most unique I've seen in an animated film, particularly one for, kids. Such a simple story. I love how such a simple story has such a large-scale journey. This also ties into the genuinely thrilling action sequences. The chase through the canyons, and especially the final battle in the sky, are absolutely amazing. Even as a teenager who's seen this film over 10 times, probably, maybe, I don't know, I still get tense during these sequences, particularly the finale. Ever since I was little, I've always had a love for the skies, planes, airships, and anything else. I've always imagined a battle in the sky, not between two people flying. No. Unique and crazy contraptions being used to fight. This film delivered on my exact fantasy I had when I was little. It doesn't even matter if the film sucked complete assballs. I'm looking at you, Transformers 5. If there's a sky battle, I will automatically add a point. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. I've always loved sky battles, and I always will. Up definitely has the best of these battles, delivering on an actually intense and well choreographed final battle, where everything comes together. The character development, the comedy, the music, the story, and especially the theme. Speaking of which, the last positive thing I want to talk about is the overall message, because there is one throughout the film. Well, two, but there's the first one. Grief, and how to move on from it. There are different types of grief, not just ones for death. Russell is a child of divorced parents, and realizes before the movie's events begin that he just has to accept it and move on from it. Throughout the film, he's in a chipper mood because he was able to move on from his grief. Okay, maybe grief isn't the right word. Maybe moving on from the past is a better way to phrase it. Carl refuses to move on after Ellie's death, wallowing himself in self-pity and thinking that he failed Ellie because they never went to Paradise Falls together. However, as the book scene later in the film shows, he realizes that life with Ellie was the real adventure. Like I said, it's a beautiful way to tie into the main theme of the movie, but there's also another theme as well, acceptance, which can also tie back into the whole thing of moving on. Accepting the fact that someone has passed away, or something in your life didn't go the way you wanted it to. It's okay, and you need to just accept it and move on. Not everything is going to go your way, but it's best to just move on from it. Move on from your mistakes. Charles Muntz is the exact opposite of Russell. In fact, it's kind of like a chain. Russell's moved on from the past, Carl has to move on from the past, and Muntz refuses to move on from the past. He shrouds himself with this one goal, this one obsession. It's quite frankly disturbing. Doug doesn't really connect to the main theme that much. I guess the whole thing of him moving on from working for months, I guess maybe kind of sort of connects to the message. But he's still great. He's still hilarious. I know I've talked about nothing but positives about Up for most of this video, but there is one small thing that isn't great. The plot holes. The big one being, when windows are open in the sky, how are the characters not getting sucked out into the abyss? Like how that just doesn't work. That's not how anything works whatsoever. But it's not a movie ruining issue. There's also the question of how are they weighing down the house, but they do actually explain it. I mean, it's with a single line of dialogue, but hey, better than nothing. The writers actually thought about it for a second and they need to explain it, so they do. Congrats on them. Give yourself a pat on the back, Dr. Peterson. However, these plot holes are pretty insignificant. As with a film like Elemental, that film has way more plot holes that actively ruin the world building. It's crazy how many plot holes are in that film. Video on that movie coming out soon enough. Hopefully, if
fair use works at some point. Another aspect I don't really love is that despite being called, well, Up, which, side note, I love that title. It is so stupidly simple. Just Up. Like, I'm sorry, that just cracks me up. But anyways, so despite being called Up, most of the film is spent with only the house really being up. Carl and Russell are not up. They're on the ground for the majority of the film. Like, I mean, at the start when the house actually goes into the sky, and then the final battle are the only scenes where everyone is up. But for the majority, like I said, the majority of the film is spent with Carl and Russell and Doug and Kevin walking for a good majority of it, while only the house is up in the sky. But if my biggest problems are small, insignificant nitpicks, then I think this is definitely one of my favorite movies ever. In conclusion, Up is absolutely one of the greatest works of art I've ever watched. It has a unique story, likable and complex characters, a fun adventure, breathtaking animation, a beautiful score, hilarious comedy, gripping drama, fast-paced action, perfect pacing, a great central theme, and a message and a strong emotional core. It's as close to perfection as Pixar gets for me. I will still give Monsters Inc., The Incredibles, and Ratatouille all 9 out of 10s, and WALL-E a 9.5 out of 10. They're all fantastic movies and I love all of them. But Up just hits so much harder for me and means more to me than all those other movies combined. In fact, to show my dedication, I was listening to the soundtrack of Up while writing this. That's how far my love for this movie goes. I will cherish this movie until the ends of time. The adventure of rewatching this movie will always be grander than ever going on like some grand, luxurious holiday to a different country. 10 out of 10.
So that's my highly detailed review of Up. I hope Shayfrilas watched the video. The film means a lot to me. However, I'm not trying to discredit his opinion in any way whatsoever. I still love Shayfrilas and his content. I'm simply providing an alternative viewpoint for a film that he thought was only good. So I don't want to hear, actually, this movie is great and Shayfrilas is a heartless piece of shit for not liking it. If any of you think that, please shove the bunting up your ass. Seriously, Succession is my favorite show of all time, and I have you to thank for that, Shayfrilas. Video on that coming soon as well. And James, if you're watching this video, I mean no ill will to you or your content. I'm sure Patrick and Chris are happy in heaven, but they also miss you a lot. Continue making great content. Although I'm begging you, please, never, ever do a video where you speak in a British accent for the entirety of it ever again. That Tim Hill ranking video was so much hard to get through with that stupid British accent. Please get a dialect coach. I am begging.